It's no secret that writing can be lonely work, but does it really have to be? Whether you're full-time, part-time, or just starting out, you'll get insights into the tricks, tips, and production habits of writers from every level of the biz. From best-selling authors to those launching their first novels, you're sure to be in the company of friends as we encourage great writers to divulge and share their secrets.
This is the Great Writers Share podcast with your host, dark urban fantasy author, Holly Line.
Hello and welcome to episode number 64 of the Great Writers Share podcast, a podcast where every week we hijack an hour or so of time from some of the kindest and hardest working writers around today to join us on the show and discuss everything that makes them tick, roar and bounce. My name's Holly Line and it's the 29th of November as of recording. So let's get into my personal update. What a month it has been! Quite in contrast to my last update on this podcast, there have been a lot of words this month. I've been participating in my 4th NaNoWriMo, and to give me a little extra booster, I signed up to Dan's bootcamp, and I am so glad that I did. This has quite simply been the best nano ever. I've made some really amazing friends in the bootcamp. We've literally spent hundreds of hours together this month on Zoom doing writing sprints and chatting. I haven't quite hit 50k yet, but I'm only 1,400 words away and Zoom is happening right after I finished in this podcast. So I'm going to win today. I'm also recording this the morning after Indie Fire, the online writers' conference that I organised with my partner in crime, Angeline Trevina. The whole day went really well and we've had fantastic feedback. It still feels a bit surreal that we did this and that it went so well. And I don't think I've been this tired or this emotional all year, and that is saying something. Today I'm talking to ALESHA Escobar. We covered her experiences of co-writing, the ways in which she cultivates a strong engagement with her readers, and the importance of writing diverse characters. But before we get into the show, I wanted to remind you of our Patreon community over at patreon.com/greatwritersshare, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get involved in our behind-the-scenes group, benefiting from early ad-free access to episodes of the show, our private Slack channel. You can ask upcoming guests any questions and get involved in our monthly giveaway. So if you like the idea of upping your author career and getting all of that good stuff, then one more time, that's patreon.com/greatwritersshare. And now, without any further ado, let's dive into the interview with the one and only ALESHA Escobar. ALESHA Escobar writes fantasy to support her chocolate habit. She enjoys reading everything from Tolkien and the Dresden Files to the Hellblazer comics and classic literature. She's the author of the international best-selling Grey Tower trilogy, an action-packed supernatural thriller set in an alternate World War II. The trilogy hit the bestseller lists on Amazon. It reached top 60 in the entire Kindle store, as well as iBooks, Kobo, Barnes & Noble Online and Amazon UK. ALESHA is also the co-author of the best-selling Aria Chronicles and Immortal Brotherhood series. Besides being a loving warrior mom to her 6 children, she enjoys crafts, consuming more coffee than is necessary, and spending time with her husband Luis, a 20-year art veteran for the Simpsons television show. Welcome to the show, ALESHA.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So would you like to start off by telling our listeners a bit about your writing journey?
Well, I've always enjoyed writing. I started off just writing short stories when I was a kid in school, like around 7 years old. And friends and family would read them and encourage me, and I kept going with it. So about time, I really took it seriously and decided to self-publish. It was maybe back in 2011 when I started, and it was kind of like a push from my husband because, you know, he knew how much I loved writing and telling stories. And he's like, I'll give you a challenge. I'll come up with a scenario and I want you to write a story about it. And that's kind of how the Grey Tower trilogy stories were born. And after that, I just kept going with it, kept getting great feedback, meeting other authors who were, friends and mentors who kept encouraging me. And finally, I'm where I'm at now, where I just, produce stories, and hopefully my readers and subscribers will keep enjoying them. And, I've built it up over, quite a few years. So it wasn't like this overnight thing. So I take it as a journey that I'm still continuing to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. So we first really met, so to speak, when you compiled the Daughters of Destiny box set. And we've done another set of anthologies since, and you co-write. So there's a lot of collaboration in your portfolio. Was that something that you kind of always planned for, or did it just crop up unexpectedly?
I'd say it definitely cropped up unexpectedly because, being writers, it's a craft that we kind of put our hearts and souls into, our creativity. So it's often an individual thing. And when you reach out and work with another author, you have to kind of find a way to blend the two minds and the two worlds together. And it's been a great learning experience because I've learned from my co-authors, just different writing style, my own strengths and weaknesses. Like I love writing action-packed scenes and getting into plot and, coming up with great, twist surprises. And I have co-authors who are amazing at dialogue and character interaction. And it helps me to pay more attention to, kind of like those underlying parts that bring it together. And, you have to have the great pacing because, your readers don't want to be nonstop action all the time, but they don't want to be lulled to sleep by, talking heads. So you have to create that perfect balance. And I think I've learned a lot, and hopefully my co-authors have learned from me as well.
Have you ever had a collaboration where it didn't mesh and didn't quite work?
So far, I'm lucky that hasn't happened yet. I would say that the one thing that kind of like irked me is like just learning how to kind of let go of some of my little pet projects, things that I think, oh, this would be great to have in here, or I want to go in this direction. And you have to stop and listen to others and learn from them. And that's something I'm kind of working on because, like I said before, most of the time when you're writing, you're doing it yourself and you're kind of like the god of your own little worlds, right? Mm-hmm. So just kind of like learning, maybe this person has a point, or maybe I should stop and listen and learn. So I'm, doing that, and I think I'm all the better for it.
Mm-hmm. How does co-writing compare to writing on your own?
It's definitely a team effort. It takes a lot of planning. The way that I've done it so far would write a chapter, and my co-author would go over my chapter, and they would give feedback, maybe even tweak some of the dialogue and wording, and then they would write their chapter, and then I would go over theirs and do the same. So that way, about time we're finished, there's kind of a cohesive voice. So at least the reader gets the feeling that one person wrote it, even though they know there are two authors. And I think that's important to do because you don't want to have it jumbled. And I think when you're writing for yourself, you're just going, you're in your own little world, and you don't get the feedback until you hand it over to the editor or, like a alpha reader or beta reader. So it's also a great help when you're co-writing because you have that immediate feedback from someone who understands what you're doing, who's coming from the author perspective.
Yeah, that kind of instant feedback. Do you think that speeds up the process?
It does, because with the way I do it, you feel like I'm pretty much writing half a book. And so I think it is faster because, you go back and forth, handing it off to each other. And when you're done, you have a finished product, and then you kind of, go over it one last time, and then, I give up to my editor. And that works differently than when I'm on my own and I'm not beholden to anyone. And so if I can't get around to writing that day, I don't feel the pressure like, oh no, if I don't send it off to my co-author, it's going to be a mess. When I'm on my own, I'm just like, yeah, I'll handle it tomorrow. So you have a little bit more flexibility when you're doing it on your own.
Which do you prefer?
I would say I prefer writing on my own, and it's not like a knock against any of my co-authors. It's just that, I started off writing, solitary, so I'm used to it, and I can, just go and do what I need to do to finish the project, and then move on to the next one. And then also, with the co-writing, you also have to consider things like legal contracts, owning the characters, owning the worlds. If they decide to write a short story based on that co-project, would they get, the full royalties from that, or would you get it because it's a world you both create together? So there's a lot more consideration that goes to that, when you're co-writing. So I would say like it's, definitely in a sense simpler when it's just you, because you don't have to make a contract for yourself, and, whatever you earn, it goes to you, especially as, indie authors. So, but from the co-written projects that I have done, the Aria Chronicles, as well as the Immortal Brotherhood, they both have been a wonderful experiences and also great projects that, I'm proud to have worked on.
Yeah, I think I'm curious to try co-writing, but also nervous about it. And I think I would really benefit from that, that accountability, and, having a deadline that, I need to get something done by a certain time for someone else to pick up their side of it. And I can imagine that's quite a positive thing, and quite, a good aspect of co-writing.
It definitely is. Yes. And I would recommend definitely do it with an author whose writing style you admire, that you're familiar with, and someone that you've known for a while, because Samantha LaFantasy and H.M. Jones, I've known them for years. So they're like friends to me. So I definitely feel comfortable with them. They're familiar with my writing style, and they enjoy the way I write. We read each other's books, and so we know how each other operates. I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, definitely. So you have quite a few series on the go at once. How do you kind of juggle everything? Do you write more than one book at once, or do you focus on one thing at a time? How does that work?
I learned a long time ago that working on, several projects or two projects at once is like crazy. Some people can do it, especially, the authors that produce like monthly. It's just insane. But for me, I like to go one at a time. And sometimes I'll pause a series and jump into a different one. For example, I'm looking forward to writing another book from my Diviner series. And I'm just finished composing what I need for my outline for the Wayward Wizard. So I do jump around in that sense. But I'll never work on two at the same time, but I will pause working on a series to, pay attention to another one. And especially depending on how sales are, which ones I see are more popular, I'll probably, work on that more to boost it. While those who aren't doing so well, I'll kind of, put on hold or, work on later.
Yeah. And then add into the mix that you have 6 children and, and a relationship to maintain. I mean, how do you keep all of those plates going?
Oh, it's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. It's a tough job, but I think it helps when the older kids, they're more independent. My oldest are like, 14, 12, 10. So, they're kind of, they're fine. You know what I mean? And then the youngest, especially my baby, the 4-year-old, she's the one who needs the most attention. She'll randomly come to me while I'm doing chores and cleaning the house, like, I want to cuddle, things like that. So they're very sweet and they're a good bunch. And I think what helps is that I have them on the schedule. And, you know how some parents, they're more free. They're like, I'm up at 10 p.m. with my kid. And I'm like, nope, it's 8 p.m. bedtime, you know. They have to be strict with it because otherwise I won't have time to write, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely believe in carving out that time to be able to write or work. Like right now, I'm speaking with you, and I let them know, okay, mommy's, you know, in an interview or meeting, and they know, okay, it's time to you know, give mom her space. So they all kind of understand that, and you know, we work together kind of as a team when each of us needs to do something.
Mm-hmm. So you have quite an engaged readership, and I know, for instance, you let them decide who you should dress up as at Halloween. And I'm looking forward to seeing your Gamora costume.
Oh, it's going to be so fun. The year before, I was Storm from X-Men, and the year before that, I was Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And you know, I had my whole survey going, and I think a few of them suggested that I dressed up as one of the warrior women from Black Panther. So I'm like, I'm not going to shave my head, but you know, I can you know, put on face paint and you know, do all of that and put on a wig, but I don't think I'm going to shave my entire head for a Halloween costume. But thanks for the suggestion.
You could get a bald cap and put all the hair underneath it. That could work.
I could. That could work.
Okay, giving you an idea.
Yeah, but they love it.
Yeah.
I think that's a fun way to, you know, get readers involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have any other tips to for other authors on how to cultivate that kind of relationship with their readers?
Yes. Well, you definitely have to let them know that you have a newsletter, that it exists. And, you know, I place those both in the front and back of my books. And I invite them to join. And what I do with my newsletters is, like, I'll share with them, you know, here are some great book recommendations, or, you know, some sales you might be interested in. Authors like yourself who I've worked with, and I'm like, I know this is a great author. You want to look at her books. I'll share those. But I also have a section in my newsletter where I connect with my readers. I'll tell them, here's an update with what's going on, you know, in my life. For example, I took some time off because I had a surgery this summer. And I have things where I check in on my readers. I'm like, talk to me. How are you doing? Especially during the whole pandemic thing. Mm-hmm. And they respond. And since, you know, they love fantasy, they love sci-fi, they love reading, I talk to them also about books, something interesting I might be reading. I also polled them before and asked, what do you like to read? And I found that a lot of my readers enjoy a mix of sci-fi and fantasy, and they also enjoy mystery. And so that allowed me to recommend more supernatural thrillers and mystery-based fantasy books to them, and urban fantasy. And they say they read like over 10 books. And I'm like, you guys are insane. You must have all the time in the world. But I love them for it, because that means that, you know, they'll keep gobbling up those books. Mm-hmm. And I think by connecting with them and not just having my newsletter pure, just sales pitch all the time, you know, because that gets tiring, right?
Yeah.
We all get, you know, the emails, and, you know, we kind of just scroll past or ignore them. But when they know that, oh, I'm going to learn something new, I'm going to check in to see how my favorite author is doing, or, oh, there's a giveaway or a contest, or, you know, things like that. Or I'm going to vote on what she is going to dress like for Halloween. And that's going to, you know, engage them more. So I think that's, you know, a great way to do it.
Yeah. Obviously, you've got to kind of tread the line between being open and personal, but also maintaining boundaries. And do you have any sort of set rules around what you do and don't include in your newsletters?
That's actually a really great question. I would say my boundaries would be, like, I never talk about, like, say, for example, you know, my marriage, because, you know, who wants to know about that? Except for the fact, like, maybe that I'm married to someone who works on a famous show, but, you know, I don't use it as a personal therapy session. But I'll talk about things like, you know, maybe in, like, oh, you know, as a mom hears what's going on, like I asked my readers one time, for example, what should I fix for lunch, different lunch ideas, because now that the kids are home and the schools aren't yet quite open where I live, I'm the lunch lady now. So I'm like, what are some great quick snack ideas and lunch ideas? And I have plenty of suggestions from great readers, from other fellow parents to grandmothers who were emailing me, giving me recipes and ideas. So that was great. But in terms of me sharing, oh, here's this personal problem, I don't go that far, because I agree there should be boundaries, and there are things that I do like to keep private. Like, I think my husband, like, he doesn't speak at all, really. Like, I mean, I was pulling teeth just getting him to do that interview for my last newsletter.
Yeah. Yeah. So how does being a person of color influence what you write and what you like, diversity in your books and things like that?
I think it's an important topic, because there are a lot of readers who do care about it and do look for it. And I also am of the opinion that it does affect you and make a difference to see a character in the story that shares your background, or who looks like you, because you do imagine placing yourself in that person's shoes. And it's a little bit of two sides of the same coin, because also I like to write my stories where, even if you may not look like a certain character or have the same background, you can relate to them on a certain level as a fellow human being who maybe goes through pain or experience betrayal. And my Great Tower trilogy, it's all about an alternate World War II, where the Nazis are using wizards and vampires to help them win the war. And a couple of my characters in the story are African Americans. One is based on Josephine Baker, who helped spy on behalf of the Allies, and she was in Nazi-occupied France. And her story was just like so inspirational and amazing. So I incorporated a character who was kind of inspired by her life and her actions. And I think that's important, because I'm a little bit of a history buff, and I love reading about history. So just kind of like bringing out those important aspects, as well as just the women who participated as well. There are a lot of women who helped win the war against the Nazis, and some of their stories are forgotten or will never be told. And I thought, well, by bringing kind of my main character Isabella's story to the forefront, it'll help kind of shed a light on just these amazing brave acts that all of these women did. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, I think, having that diversity is great, because it gives you a wider, more beautiful picture of just how much people have contributed, to society, the world.
Yeah. So did you do a lot of research then for that around World War II and everything?
Oh, I did a lot of research, documentaries. I learned about the women of the Special Operations Executive, and there's actually a movie based on one of the women. It's called Carve Her Name with Pride. I believe it's called Carve Her Name with Pride. And it's about one of the women who, she had a young daughter, and she lost her husband in the war, and she wanted to still make a difference. And she went into Nazi-occupied France. She spied, for the British, and she helped save countless lives. She with resistance, and sadly, in the end, she was one of the women who were lined up and executed. But she was a hero, and I believe, like, by calling the movie Carve Her Name with Pride, it gives you that idea that she will never be forgotten, and she contributed to making the world a better place.
Yeah. Well, see, I didn't know anything about that, so yeah. Well, there's a lot of bias in history, isn't there, that we have to kind of unpick.
Right. There's so much to learn, so many great stories. And sadly, depending on where you live and how your school system is run, they want to kind of like cram everything in, like, okay, we only have this amount of allotted time, and so we're going to focus on this. And hopefully, by being authors and opening up, our source to other people, they'll get interested in these different topics and want to learn for themselves. So I think that's ultimately goal of education, is to kind of give you the tools you need to be your own learner and to be able to learn new things. I have a background in teaching, so this is definitely something, near and dear to my heart. So
yeah. I didn't realize you were a teacher before. So did you give up teaching to write full time?
I gave up teaching to be a mom full time.
Right.
And I started writing toward the end of my teaching career. And I figured if I'm going to be home, I might as well, pursue this, because, I can be a work at home mom, and I don't have to stop being creative and, passionate about my pursuits. I can do both. So that's what I kind of did. And my husband was very encouraging. And I think I'll keep on doing it. It's been a few years now, and I stopped.
Cool. Okay, I have a couple of questions from our patrons. Laura Kay would like to know what one book or movie really gave you that divine inspiration feeling.
Oh, wow. That would have to be The Divine Comedy by Dante. It was like, it was just like the most amazing read. I did back in college, and it was just so inspirational and beautiful. And the idea of, traversing literally heaven and hell to reach, the person that, you love the most. And, through loving someone else, being able to see, the image of God. I thought that his message was, a really inspiring one, because, there's just so much in our world that, is negative, that brings a lot of people down. And I'm like kind of an optimist, and I like to try to bring happiness and positivity to others. So I love the idea of being able to reach out to others, and through them achieve great things that will be lasting. So I definitely enjoyed The Divine Comedy. And it's just rich, full of history, full of references. It makes you want to go research and learn about other things. So I definitely love that book.
Mm-hmm. Great answer. Laura would also know, what is your favorite chocolate bar that you are being an author to support the habit of consuming?
My favorite chocolate bar. It would have to be Hershey's with almonds. That is my favorite. Even though I haven't had it in a long time, since I'm doing the keto diet. So no chocolate candies for me.
Oh, yeah. Faye would like to know, what is it about fantasy that captured your interest?
Fantasy interests me because I enjoy the what if question. Like, what if our world was like this? What if magic really existed? And what does it mean when it's almost like a metaphor for the use of power in our world, right? If you were gifted with some sort of magic or superhuman ability, how would you use it and why? And so just going through those questions makes it a fun story and interesting to me. For example, what I like to do with my villains in the fantasy stories, I don't like to make them the cardboard, typical, villains who are just bad for being bad's sake. They have a reason. They have motivation. Sometimes the villain thinks that they're the hero and that they're actually doing something. Like in my current co-write book that's coming out in December, the Immortal Brotherhood, there's a group of cultists who call themselves the Servants of Death, and they want to bring death to kind of like the supernatural, the fairy world, because they believe it's a threat to the human world. And they're like, we're gonna take everything over and make sure everyone is safe. And that's scary because it has implications, right? Because we're like, we're gonna make you safe, just trust, right? And and it turns out that they're the villains and they're making a mess of it all.
Yes, I like that. So Faye had another question, which was, do you have any tips for writing characters of color?
Okay, my view is that when you're writing characters of color, write them like normal people, because we are like there are things that there are some things, unless I'm doing something that is very culturally specific or regional. For example, in my books, the characters, her parents and grandparents are Southern, from the southern part of the United States. So they might have a little bit of an accent of where they're talking. Because in my life, I do have Southern grandparents, and so I was kind of inspired by that. So there's, certain mannerisms, certain ways of speaking. So I think it's okay to include those things because that's part of the culture.
Yeah.
But, obviously you don't want to do stereotypes. And so I would say, just write them as, normal people who have lives, who have families, jobs, whatever. And, just, present them as normal. And I know there's a debate about it. For example, like, what if, you have a character of color who might be on, team bad guy or a villain. And I know some people shy away from writing that because they feel it would be offensive to write them in that light. And I think, well, it's not quite fair, because there are good and bad people of all backgrounds, no matter what institution you belong to, what country, whatever. There are good and bad people, and that's the truth of the world. And you present them, in your stories, to kind of convey a certain lesson. For example, this person is doing this thing because I think the thing is that you give another level to it. You give it depth. For example, might be doing something bad, but maybe they have a certain motivation, or maybe have a character arc where they realize, wait a minute, I've been wrong, and they develop into someone different. So I think the thing is to just give them depth and present them like as just people among other people. Because it's a double-edged sword when you try to I don't want coddled and see a character who looks like me, who's like, oh, she's so perfect and so great. I want someone who is a real character, and maybe they have flaws, and that's how we like to see our heroes as well. We want our heroes to not be perfect. They might have flaws. They stumble and fall, and they learn. And I think that as long as you're not being like belligerent or overly stereotypical, it should be okay to write those characters, especially if you've done research on it and you know what you're doing. Because there are certain things that I write about I had no clue, but I researched my butt off, and so at least I can write with enough confidence.
I think it's a really interesting time, and I'm hopeful for the future, because people are being more sensitive, but it's also it's difficult to know. People take offense so easily now, whereas I think perhaps they didn't used to, and it's very difficult to tread the line. I want to write more diverse characters. I'm really aware now that my books don't have that much diversity in, but at the same time, I don't want to get anything wrong. And I think a lot of us are trying. Right. We're trying to do better, but it's a difficult time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really odd because, for example, with my Wayward Wizard books, the main character is like a white guy, I have no idea what it's like to be a white guy, but that was the main character I chose for the story, and I did it, and I did well enough. It's hard enough just writing a man, as a woman, like, because, I would give my husband to look over it, and he's like, that's not how a guy would act. But, so I definitely, I think, maybe if you have a friend who you might want to say, hey, could you look over this and think, that's a good thing to do. Do your research, and then just, be true to characters, because at the end of the day, I like to see, whether it's a movie or a book, I like to see characters who are interesting, who are multi-dimensional, and they're not, cardboard characters, and who give me a great story. And, I've read books where there were no characters of color, or maybe the main character was a character of color. So it just all depends. And I think, we need to just, keep our minds open and, read as much as possible. Reading is such an important thing, just to open up your mind, open up your imagination, and to learn new things.
Actually, a question that's just occurred to me. Do you think it's an issue when authors go to get covers? I know one of my friends has a series where the main characters are people of color, and it's really hard to find stock photos for those covers. Do you think that's an issue for authors, and what can we do about it?
Yeah, I have seen it as an issue, whether it's like for, romance or, fantasy genre, where they're looking for those stock images. And one company I think you know it as well, the Neo Stock, like I love what they've been doing. And I would like to see more of it too, because, for example, with my Diviner series, I'm looking for, more characters that I can put on the cover for that. So I think it's if anyone has, that idea of, hey, let's incorporate this, or even I'm going to launch somewhere, it's, mostly characters of color that we can use to put on book covers, that's a great idea. So something that, is waiting to be fulfilled. And, but I definitely have, talked with authors who are searching for those kinds of photos for their books, and been kind of a hard search. So I would definitely support seeing more of that, because, our covers are an important part of our books and our marketing.
Yeah. I mean, there is the option to get something original rendered, or illustrated, but that's so far out of many authors' price range. So it's a really difficult situation.
Yeah, it is. So hopefully, as the need arises, I would imagine that someone will step in to fulfill that, because there's definitely a market for that.
Okay, and we ask all of our guests on Great Writers Share, why do you write?
I write because I need an outlet for all of the craziness that happens in my mind, all of my imagination. I need to put it somewhere. So I figure I need to do it in writing. And it's definitely a passion and a hobby of mine that I've been looking up to turn into business. And it's something that fulfills me and that I enjoy doing. So I think whatever your passion is, definitely find a smart way to, maybe pursue it as a career as well as a passion. Not everyone is lucky enough for their career to also be their passion.
Okay, we have come to the rapid fire round. So I have 10 questions for you. Answer as quickly as you can. Don't overthink. Are you ready?
Okay. I'm ready.
Okay. Favorite female superhero?
Wonder Woman.
Print or ebook?
Ebook.
Most inspiring season?
Fall.
The place you most want to travel to?
Italy.
Best fantasy trope?
The Chosen One.
Favorite thing about being a writer?
I make my own schedule.
Hardest thing about being a writer?
I make my own schedule.
Your writing snack of choice?
Coffee. Does that count as a snack? Coffee.
I'll let you have it. Okay, and this might be the hardest question. It might be the easiest question. The Simpsons or Futurama?
Simpsons.
I kind of wanted you to say Futurama and don't tell my husband.
Well, he's right across from me working on the show, so I think I'll be a good loyal wife.
Oh, bless you. Awesome. Thank you so much for talking to me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And just finally, can you tell our listeners where they can find out more about you and your books?
You can visit my website, ALESHAEscobar.com, or you can find me on Amazon. Just type in my name, ALESHA Escobar, and my author page and my books should pop up.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Great Writers Share podcast. Tune in next week when John will be interviewing new author Sam Frost. Don't forget, you can catch up on our entire backlist of episodes, plus get all of the backstage access, our Slack channel, and even one-to-one coaching from Dan by joining our Patreon from as little as $1 a month. Find out more at patreon.com/greatwritersshare. Until next time.